Welcome to Small Thing, Big Change, the show where we dive into the hidden stories behind the tiniest objects that have shaped our world in the biggest ways. I'm your host, and today, we're picking up something so familiar you might not give it a second thought: the pencil. That little stick of wood and graphite sitting on your desk? It's not just for doodling or jotting down grocery lists. This unassuming tool has sparked revolutions in education, fueled artistic masterpieces, built industries, and even played a role in space exploration. From ancient scribes to astronauts, the pencil has left its mark, literally and figuratively, on human history. So, grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's uncover the surprising story of the pencil. This is Small Thing, Big Change. Chapter 1. The Origins of the Mark. Narrator. Let's start at the very beginning, long before the pencil as we know it existed. Humans have always needed to make marks, to communicate, to record, to create. Thousands of years ago, ancient civilizations used reeds, quills, and even sticks dipped in ink or ash to scratch their thoughts onto papyrus, clay, or stone. But these tools were messy, inconsistent, and often required constant redipping or sharpening. Imagine trying to write a love letter with a soggy reed that keeps blotting ink everywhere. Not exactly romantic. Then, sometime in the mid-16th century, something remarkable happened in a small town called Borrowdale, in England's Lake District. Miners stumbled upon a strange, black, shiny substance buried deep in the earth. They called it wad or black lead, but we now know it as graphite. This wasn't just any rock. It was soft enough to mark paper, smooth enough to feel effortless, and durable enough to last. The locals quickly realized its value. Shepherds used chunks of graphite to mark their sheep, and artists began experimenting with it to sketch. But here's where it gets interesting. Graphite wasn't just a local curiosity. It was a strategic resource. Graphite from Borrowdale was so pure and high quality that it became a closely guarded secret. The British Crown restricted its mining and export, using it to make molds for cannonballs during wartime. Yes, the same stuff in your pencil was once a military asset. Who would have thought that a writing tool could have such a dramatic backstory? The problem was, raw graphite was messy. It smudged, it crumbled, and it left your hands looking like you'd been wrestling with charcoal. Enter the first big innovation. People started wrapping graphite sticks in string or sheepskin to keep their hands clean. It was a crude solution, but it hinted at what was to come, a tool that was portable, precise, and practical. Chapter 2. The Birth of the Modern Pencil. Narrator. Fast forward to 1795, in the midst of the Napoleonic Wars. A French engineer named Nicolas Jacques Conti was tasked with solving a problem. France was cut off from England's graphite supply due to trade embargoes. Graphite was critical not just for writing but for military applications, like Conti's own work in designing hot air balloons. Without graphite, France was stuck. Conti, a brilliant inventor, didn't just sit around complaining. He got to work. Conti discovered that by mixing powdered graphite with clay and firing it in a kiln, he could create a synthetic graphite core that was just as effective as pure graphite but far more controllable. By adjusting the ratio of graphite to clay, he could make the lead harder or softer, creating different grades for different purposes, soft for artists, hard for engineers. This was a game changer. Suddenly, pencils weren't just a luxury for the elite, they could be mass-produced. Conti's invention wasn't just about chemistry, it was about accessibility. His process made pencils cheaper and more consistent, paving the way for them to become a household staple. By the early 19th century, pencil factories were popping up across Europe and America. In Germany, companies like Faber-Castell and Stettler perfected the craft, turning pencils into precision instruments. In the United States, a young entrepreneur named Eberhard Faber set up shop in New York, laying the groundwork for an American pencil empire. But let's talk about the wood for a moment. A pencil isn't just graphite, it's the marriage of graphite and wood, and not just any wood. The best pencils were made from cedar, specifically the incense cedar of California's Sierra Nevada. Why cedar? It's soft enough to sharpen easily but strong enough to hold the graphite core without splitting. Plus, it smells amazing when you sharpen it. Admit it, there's something oddly satisfying about that cedar scent. The design we now take for granted, the hexagonal pencil, came about for practical reasons. Round pencils rolled off desks, annoying, and square ones were uncomfortable to hold for long periods. The hexagon? The perfect compromise. It stays put and feels good in your hand. This tiny design choice, made in the 19th century, is why most pencils today still have 6 sides. Small thing, big change. Chapter 3. The Pencil and the Education Revolution. Narrator. By the mid-19th century, pencils were no longer a novelty, they were a necessity. And nowhere was their impact felt more than in education. Before pencils, writing was a privilege. Quills and ink were expensive and required skill to use without making a mess. But pencils? They were cheap, portable, and forgiving. If you made a mistake, you could erase it. More on that eraser in a bit. The rise of public education in Europe and America coincided with the pencil's mass production. For the first time, children from all walks of life could afford a tool to write, draw, and learn. Schools handed out slate pencils, early pencils with slate cores for writing on chalkboards, but the graphite pencil quickly became the star. It was a democratizing force. A child in a rural schoolhouse could sketch, solve math problems, or write an essay with the same tool used by engineers and artists in cities. The pencil didn't just make education accessible, it shaped how we learn. Standardized tests, which became widespread in the 20th century, relied heavily on pencils. The famous No. 2 pencil, with its specific graphite hardness, HB grade, became the standard for filling in bubble sheets. Why No. 2? It's the Goldilocks of pencils. Not too soft to smudge, not too hard to leave faint marks. It's just right for machines to read. Next time you're filling in a Scantron sheet, thank the pencil for making it possible. But the pencil's role in education wasn't just about practicality. It was about creativity. Artists like John Singer Sargent and Norman Rockwell used pencils to sketch their initial ideas, proving that this simple tool could bridge the gap between a fleeting thought and a masterpiece. The pencil gave people permission to experiment, to make mistakes, to try again. And that brings us to one of the pencil's unsung heroes, the eraser. Chapter 4. The Eraser's Redemption. Narrator. Let's take a moment to appreciate the eraser, that little pink or white nub at the end of your pencil. Before erasers, mistakes were a nightmare. Ink was permanent, and early graphite marks could only be scraped off with breadcrumbs. Yes, breadcrumbs. In 1770, an English chemist named Joseph Priestley, the same guy who discovered oxygen, noticed that a material called rubber could rub out pencil marks. Hence the name rubber for erasers. But here's a fun fact. The eraser we know today wasn't attached to pencils until 1858, when an American named Hyman Lipman patented the idea of gluing a rubber eraser to the end of a pencil. It seems so obvious now, but at the time, it was revolutionary. Suddenly, mistakes weren't just fixable, they were expected. The eraser normalized trial and error, encouraging creativity and risk-taking. There's a cultural twist here, too. In Japan, erasers are a whole different story. They're collectible, often beautifully designed, and even used in competitive erasing games, where kids race to erase pencil marks cleanly. It's a reminder that even the smallest parts of a pencil can inspire obsession and innovation. Chapter 5. The Pencil in Industry and War. Narrator. The pencil wasn't just a tool for schoolchildren and artists, it was a workhorse in industry and even warfare. During the Industrial Revolution, engineers and architects relied on pencils to draft blueprints for bridges, railways, and factories. The precision of tiniest graded pencils allowed for detailed technical drawings that fueled progress. Imagine trying to design a steam engine with a quill and ink. Good luck. During World War II, pencils took on a surprising role. The Charles Fraser Smith, a real-life inspiration for James Bond's Q, designed a spy pencil for British intelligence. These pencils looked ordinary but contained hidden compartments for maps, compasses, or even tiny tools. They were smuggled to prisoners of war to aid in escapes. A pencil as a secret weapon? That's the kind of story we live for here at Small Thing, Big Change. And then there's the space race. In the 1960s, NASA needed a writing tool that worked in zero gravity. Pens wouldn't do. Ink doesn't flow without gravity. The solution? The humble pencil. Early astronauts used mechanical pencils, which were reliable and didn't require fancy engineering. There's an urban legend that NASA spent millions developing a space pen while the Soviets just used pencils. The truth is more practical. Both sides used pencils at first, but pencils created graphite dust that could clog equipment in space. Eventually, a private company developed the Fisher space pen, but for a while, the pencil was the unsung hero of space exploration. Chapter 6. The Pencil's Cultural Legacy. Narrator. By the 20th century, the pencil was everywhere. It was the tool of choice for writers like Ernest Hemingway, who famously said, "Write drunk, edit sober," and you can bet he was editing with a pencil. It was the go-to for cartoonists like Charles Schulz, who brought Snoopy to life with pencil sketches. Even today, animators and designers start with pencils before moving to digital tools. But the pencil's influence goes beyond art and literature. It's a symbol of simplicity and ingenuity. In a world obsessed with high-tech gadgets, the pencil remains stubbornly analog, yet it's never gone out of style. It's sustainable, made from wood and clay, and endlessly recyclable. You can sharpen a pencil with a knife if you're feeling old school, or use a fancy electric sharpener if you're not. It's versatile, universal, and timeless. The pencil also has a dark side, though. Graphite mining, especially in its early days, was dangerous work, with miners exposed to dust and hazardous conditions. Even today, ethical concerns about graphite sourcing, much of it now comes from China, remind us that even small objects can have big footprints. But the pencil industry has also driven innovation in sustainable forestry and recycling, showing that even this tiny tool can evolve with the times. Chapter 7. The Pencil Today and Tomorrow. Narrator. So where does the pencil stand today? In a digital age of tablets and styluses, you might think the pencil is fading into obscurity. But you'd be wrong. Pencils are still a multi-billion-dollar industry. Brands like Blackwing, beloved by writers and artists, have cult followings. Limited edition pencils, like Japan's colorful Tombow sets, are collector's items. And let's not forget the satisfying ritual of sharpening a pencil. There's a reason why artisanal pencil sharpeners exist. Pencils are also inspiring new technologies. The Apple Pencil, for example, borrows the pencil's name and shape to bridge the analog and digital worlds. It's a nod to the pencil's enduring design, intuitive, ergonomic, and endlessly adaptable. Meanwhile, researchers are exploring graphite-based materials like graphene, which could revolutionize everything from batteries to medical devices. The pencil's core, it turns out, might hold the key to the future. Closing thoughts. Narrator. As we wrap up this journey, let's take a moment to appreciate the pencil for what it is, a small thing that made a big change. It democratized education, fueled creativity, powered industries, and even helped us reach the stars. It's a reminder that the most powerful innovations don't always shout, they whisper. They sit quietly on your desk, waiting for you to pick them up and make your mark. So, next time you grab a pencil, think about the centuries of ingenuity packed into that six-sided stick. And if you're as fascinated by these hidden stories as we are, hit that subscribe button. We've got new episodes every week, diving into the unnoticed side of innovation. This is Small Thing, Big Change, and I'm your host. Until next time, keep looking for the big stories in the smallest things.